in five, four, three.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the latest broadcast from the PowerPlayChess channel. Before I get going, I just want to make sure that everyone can see everything and hear everything that's going on. Just make sure everything is working. So if you're out there, let me know you're out there. Let's hear from you in the chat. I've got one eye on the chat here. There's a slight delay. Let's see if anyone turns up for a start. I can see we've got a couple of people there, and then I'll do some introductions in a second. Well, they'll turn. Oh, here we go. Greg Smith says, "Yep." There we go. We've burst into life. Good. It seems to be working. So, welcome everyone. Today, I'm interviewing Ben Johnson, the founder and creator of the Perpetual Chess podcast. An excellent podcast. I mean, perhaps one of the most well-known podcasts in the world, chess podcasts in the world. Some superb information there. And we're talking about his book that came out in 2023, Perpetual Chess Improvement, as well as his new Chessable course, Identifying Critical Moments in Chess. For those of you who don't know, Ben is a national master from New Jersey in the USA. And, well, yeah, his Perpetual Chess podcast features excellent interviews with, concerning all kinds of matters to do with chess. And his book distills so much information that he's gleaned over the hundreds of episodes of the Perpetual Chess podcast. So, anyway, without further ado, welcome, Ben. How are you?
I'm well, Daniel. Thanks for having me. As you know, longtime fan of PowerPlayChess. So
That's very, very kind. Well, so I'm turning things on its head and interviewing you rather than the other way around. So this is a slightly strange experience for me, actually, I have to say.
Yeah, well, and having chess positions when I talk about chess is going to be very confusing for me as well. I'm used to just shooting the. I won't say the word, but
yeah. So, do you enjoy being the interviewee rather than the interviewer?
In moderation, I do. Yeah, I wouldn't want to do. I wouldn't want to be interviewed all the time. But once in a while, it's fun.
Okay. Well, listen. Let's. I can see. I'm going to be flipping back and forth because I can see. We've got lots of people on the chat, so I can see we've got quite a few people there already. PL says hi from Germany. Gary Lewis, hi. Kevin Winter, who we said hi to on Twitter already. He says everything's all good. Adrian says greetings from Freiburg in Germany, and so on. There we go. Everything seems to be working fine. So, first of all, before we get onto the book and Chessable, about the podcast, what gave you the idea to actually start the Perpetual Chess podcast?
I think a lot of podcast hosts and creators start out as podcast fans, and that was certainly the case for me. I have a lot of interest, chess and non-chess. Daniel, I know you're a big football fan. I'm a bigger fan of American sports, but I listen to podcasts related to those, NBA in particular. And human interest podcasts like interview shows and movie reviews and so on and so forth. And back when I started this in 2016, I was driving around a decent amount. Plus, one of my daughter was just coming to life, and my son was a few years old. So a lot of chores around the house and stuff, and was really getting into them. And there wasn't much based on chess. And I thought chess interview shows in particular, there wasn't much being offered, and it didn't feel like you knew that much about the personalities, at least not if you weren't like a super hardcore avid new in chess reader or something like that.
Yeah. It seems to me that maybe I got this wrong, I don't know, but the podcast has kind of morphed a little bit, and it's turned into a kind of adult improvers as the main theme. Is that fair?
It's certainly grown. Like that has become a more bigger emphasis. A lot of that, honestly, is just that's what people are most interested in. At least that's the feedback I've gotten. So yeah, it started out a higher percentage of grandmaster interviews and a lot about their career. Um, but a lot of people, what they wanted to know is how'd you get to be so good? You know?
Yeah.
So it's certainly become a bigger emphasis. And then, less than a year into the podcast, I started what's called the Adult Improver series. And it turned out that that really resonated with people as well, because if you're an adult playing chess, most people are not at the professional level. So hearing these interviews with these admittedly brilliant people, but for who probably have some natural ability at chess and started it at a very young age and are not necessarily able to articulate what it is that makes them so special. So they didn't necessarily find it as relatable as like, a working parent who, scraped and clawed their way to gaining 150 points or something like that. So definitely a bigger emphasis than the early days on chess improvement, but I try to at least stay true to my roots because at heart, I'm interested in storytelling and how chess intersects with people's lives. And to me, that includes everything. I mean, that includes professionals and top players, but also obviously authors and content creators and amateur adult improvers as well.
Actually, you touched upon a question I was going to ask. In that, do you find that a lot of the kind of really strong players actually have never really questioned how they got so good?
Yeah, or they think they know how, but really they don't, like they're like, I read this book and I gained 800 points. And you're like, well, I read that book.
Right.
I didn't gain 800
I want my
points.
money back.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. And if you, again, I'm a sports fan, so I always look at it through that lens. Like, and if you're interviewing someone like LeBron James, I wouldn't necessarily expect him to like, and he's actually, in addition to being obviously a world-class historical athlete, he's a brilliant decision maker and is known to have like a photographic memory for like dissecting plays from 15 years ago and stuff like that. But despite that, if you ask him like, how do I increase my skills at basketball, he's not necessarily going to be the best person to answer that. I mean, he didn't necessarily need to. He played a lot and became great, but he didn't necessarily need to do like plyometric training to increase his vertical jump when he was a teenager and stuff like that, So I think it cuts, it's bigger than chess. This phenomenon of assuming that the people who are the best at things means that they're also the best teachers. But it's certainly true in chess.
Yeah, definitely. I was thinking about that when there was a passage in the book where you'd interviewed Keith Arkle.
Yeah,
and many people on the chat who from England and from elsewhere will know Keith Arkle very well. He's an English grandmaster and he is a prolific player. I mean, he never stops playing. It seems to me. I mean, he's still out there pounding away on the circuit and still winning tournaments. His record is absolutely remarkable. But Keith is very well known for his endgame play. And you asked him, well, how did you get so good at endgames?
Right.
And he basically said, well, I've barely read an endgame book in my life.
Right.
And I thought that was fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, and he does admit to like being a particular fan of Karpov and following his games. And I actually find someone like Keith being air quotes a lower level grandmaster. Like I do find him more relatable than a super GM, but nonetheless, yeah, the primary, and it almost feels like these top players, even including at Keith's level, they don't necessarily want to say, the famous Fisher quote, "I just got good," but there is an element of that. And Keith, I mean, the one thing you have to say about Keith unequivocally is he competes a ton. He plays so many tournaments. So to the extent that you're trying to deconstruct someone who's had more longevity, and at least from his perspective, maybe not as much natural talent as some other players. It's competing a ton. And even if he's not necessarily hitting the books for 6 hours and like poring over every game, just the very process of channeling that level of focus so many times per year has obviously led to him becoming a British legend.
I mean, for me, what that said was basically different people learn in different ways.
Yeah, exactly.
Some people study like crazy and are theoretically very good. Keith, as you said, just plays so much, and he's gleaned so much information from practical play, and he's a brilliant practical endgame player. Whereas if you think of someone like Carsten Müller from Germany,
Right.
who's just a phenomenal theoretician, and again, his endgame knowledge is amazing, but he's come at it from a very bookish angle, I would say.
Right.
So
Yeah.
people learn in different ways, it seems to me. So anyway,
Yeah.
before we go any further, let me just say we're talking about this excellent book here, Perpetual Chess Improvement. I think you can all see that. I've put the link to where you can buy it from New in Chess on the chat, which is pinned there. I have to say, Ben, I've really enjoyed going through this book. In fact, I've got it on my phone, and if I'm traveling into the New in Chess app, and when I've been traveling on the train into town, then I've been reading it, on this, and I've just found it really enjoyable for all kinds of reasons. But yeah, there's so much information you've managed to distill from your podcast. I mean, did you find that difficult? Because I mean, how many episodes have you recorded? Hundreds and hundreds by now. Was that difficult to distill all this information?
I think the hardest part was sort of getting the skeleton in place of sort of what themes you want to include, maybe a few that you'll leave out, and like having the broader structure. But as you say, there is so much material that once I had that in place, the words kind of wrote themselves for the most part. I do have, I did invest in a transcript database. I mean, these days there's probably something free, but I paid for like something called Trint, which basically is like searchable AI generated transcript of all the podcasts, and like had to upload them all. So if ever I needed a certain quote about like a certain chess improvement theme, I can search for a certain word, and that certainly helped in a few cases. But more often than not, it was just like just in the like thinking about the major themes that I wanted to include, and then obviously continuing to do interviews every week while I do it. I would have little either new stuff that came up that I wanted to include, or at least like reminders of, oh yeah, we talked about this with so and so, some years back. So it wasn't that hard. And we should say, for anyone who's not that familiar with the book, this is the rare chess book that's like at least 80% words. So we're gonna look at some chess positions today.
Well, we are. I think
this was words first, position second.
Right, but I think what I found was that it was, you say lots of words. It sounds like the comment on Mozart's music, too many notes. I think that was Emperor Franz Joseph. His comment after one of Mozart's concerts. He said, "What did you think, Emperor?" He said, "Too many notes." Well, I should say that, of course, it's a wordy book, but I found it so relatable, and when I say an easy read, I don't mean in the sense that it's simple information, but it's very easy to read, and there are lots of nice diagrams that illustrate your themes, and we should we should go to a position, and I'm sure that hopefully all of you who are watching will be familiar with this position and this game. So it's Bobby Fischer against Paul Benko from that famous US Championship in 1963. An unbelievable tournament, Ben.
Yeah, Fischer's such a legend. Yeah, and those years, I mean, he was just running roughshod through everyone.
Okay, so this move, Queen E8. Kevin says, I enjoyed the book because it was mostly words.
Thanks. Yeah, and to Daniel's point, it is like it's mostly words in that there's more words than chess diagrams, but it is a quick read. Like I recorded the audiobook, which will someday be released. I don't know when. It's
Ah,
taking forever. And it's like 10 hours of reading, something like that, if that. I've had people tell me 6 hours. So,
by the way, that was a question that somebody had. That was exactly the question, which was.
when the hell is the audiobook coming out?
That was Kevin Daly on Patreon asks, the book is really good, plenty of good tips. Ben had talked about an audiobook version. Is there any update on this? So what's the story,
Yeah, so
Ben?
I know some people have been waiting. I've been frustrated as well because this book came out about a year ago, and so I recorded the audiobook about a year ago, and originally it was supposed to be out within 6 weeks. So
Oh, wow.
obviously it's been like 10 months since then, and all I can say is New in Chess had never done an audiobook before, and their distributor that they use for physical books told them it would be no problem, but then it turned out it was a problem. They were having a hang up with Amazon where I don't even know if I'm supposed to reveal all these details,
Okay.
but whatever. They were having a hang up where they held up their entire catalog, including this, and it's still happening. And New in Chess is working to pursue other avenues, but unfortunately, I don't have a firm timeline. But they're still actively working on it, so I don't think it'll be that much longer. Famous last words.
Okay, but we should also mention that there are the book is available in various formats. So
Right, yeah.
I've
You
been
can get
reading
it
it
in
on
every other format.
on the New in Chess app.
Yeah.
And there are
Kindle, yeah.
Kindle, yeah.
Forward
Okay.
chess, etc. Yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, everyone, let's talk chess. So, white to play. What did Fischer do next? Let's have a variation. This is maybe one of the most well-known positions of Bobby Fischer's games. Yeah, this famous US Championship 1963/1964, where Fischer won with 11 out of 11, and this is one of his most celebrated games. So let's have a variation, folks.
Yeah, I see a few people in the chat, of course, are familiar, and I will just say that the primary reason I included this position in the book, and there's a similar thing with Shirov's famous bishop takes h3 elsewhere in the book. When I include something like that, it's to set the stage for something else, because drawing comparisons between some of the books about pattern recognition and how important that is for improving your chess skills. So this, even if you've seen it, the next example will build on this classic example.
Nithin Capablanca says, is this beautiful book available in India?
That is a good question. You might need to go for Kindle in India, although I don't know for sure how New in Chess's distribution is there.
Sure, but anyway, one can get the book in digital format. So absolutely, you can just go to Nithin. You can just go to the New in Chess website. You've got the address there, and you can get the digital version. So Michael F says, bishop takes.
Shout out to Michael, by the way. He's in the book.
Ah, cool. Excellent. And then this remarkable move. Vlasis says, I would play bishop h6, but I think Fischer played something crazy here. He did. He played this move, rook f6. Actually, I often show this game to students, young kids who haven't seen this before. And actually, we should mention the whole point is that if e5, then black can play f5.
Right,
Preventing
hitting a queen.
this. Yeah,
Yeah, offering a queen trade, which kind of gains a tempo. So you can't take en passant because your queen.
Yeah. So that's the point of rook f6, so that if this, then it really is going to be mate here. That's the whole point. But yeah, I often give this, and actually, when we get to this position, they kind of scratch their heads a little bit. But there are so many winning moves for white.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, there's like everything wins. Yeah.
Absolutely everything wins. So I'm just going to throw that one out there to get a winning move before we move on. So yeah, your point about this example is pattern recognition. So how do you learn pattern recognition?
Yeah, so that gets back to what we were talking about earlier, because it seems like when you're young, you learn it relatively effortlessly. But if you're an adult, I think more conscious effort is necessary. I'm a big fan of the Checkmate Patterns manual, and now New in Chess has built on that with 100 tactical patterns you must know. Stuff like Puzzle Rush in moderation, as long as you're like setting rules for yourself, I think is good. And what I say in the book is that pattern recognition, I think specifically if you're say below 1500, something like that, you want to consciously work to develop those muscles. Although I recently, as I was saying, like stuff, the project always morphs, new information always comes to light. Like I recently interviewed someone in his late 40s who recently made NM here in the United States, and he actually decided to lean into more advanced pattern recognition because he felt like trying to improve calculation at his station in life was more challenging. Whereas even learning sort of advanced patterns, opening tabias and stuff like that, and memorizing model games from his openings, he felt like that was a better way to improve, and it worked for him. So yeah, the jury's still out on a lot of these things, but I try to present all the information or the best information that's been discussed at least.
Yeah, okay. So someone's suggesting Rook H6 here, saying Rook H6, it must win. Now that's not calculation, is it? I'd be very tempted to play F5 here. That's the move that Fischer was trying to prevent. So, I mean, maybe there's a win here. Yeah, there is a win, actually. Oh, no, it's not so clear, actually. No, not so clear.
Oh, yeah, you don't have bishop c4. Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's no bishop c4. So I'm afraid we've managed to actually, with Rook H6, just destroy Bobby's idea. We've missed it completely. Omkar Chakradeo says Knight E2.
Yeah, that's what Fischer played, but not the engine's number one choice by a long shot.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, but it just wins a piece, doesn't it? I think that's the point. Yeah, Knight E2 is the move that was played, but many good moves here. But yes, let's go on to the game that you linked this with, which was a miniature from David Howell. If I can get to it. So David Howell, of course, one of England's strongest grandmasters, and he played this game way back in 2009 in the C tournament in Vacanze. And there is a related theme. Actually, I remember this game at the time. I was going, 18 moves? That's remarkable.
He was just a young buck then, right?
Yeah, he was pretty young. Okay, so let's throw this one out. So white play. What did David do next? By the way, just not related to this. So you've had hundreds of podcasts. You've interviewed so many people about tips to improve their game. Are you still surprised by anything that people come up with?
It's tough to surprise me at this point, I have to say. I'm more surprised if someone like names a book I haven't heard of or something at this point, which does still happen. But in terms of like actual advice, what their approach is, I do feel like through these, 400 plus interviews and just like chess discourse evolving outside of the podcast too. Obviously, the podcast is only a tiny part of the chess ecosystem. I feel like people have coalesced around, like people know what to do, whether they do it or not. And, things, you will want to change things a little bit based on your age and how much time you have and stuff like that. But I don't think there's, as Ben Feingold says in the introduction, I don't think there's any secret ingredient at this point, and there's no shortcuts, as I say in the book. So knowing what to do and doing it is still like a vast gap, you know.
Actually, that brings me on to a question that someone asked on the YouTube channel. They said, hang on, let me get it here.
While you're getting it, I'll just quickly answer. Someone in the chat asked how many pages
sure.
the book is. It's about 200 pages of this size page. I'm always terrible holding up a book for a camera. But
I think you got it there. Okay, here we go. Someone, I don't know this guy's name, but I find this quite a funny, as you say, at this point, I think we know what you have to do. At least it's set out very nicely in the book. But somebody says, yeah, you get the problem. He says, once you've identified a weakness in your play, how do you build up the motivation to work on it? I know
I'm the wrong guy to ask.
Yeah, I know that calculation has been your... well, he talks about calculation. But how do you make the strides to improve your skill if you don't have the necessary motivation? My personal issue is lack of courage to make the positionally desirable active move if I see it leads to an unclear position. Wow, it sounds like you've identified something there. Okay, I haven't got your name. How do you get the personal motivation, Ben?
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, it's tough to sustain the motivation to put the work in. And it's not something like I think it's a very personal decision that I wouldn't advocate that everyone should be spending 3 hours a day studying chess, you know, and if they're not getting paid for it and they're not like spending time with their loved ones and stuff like that. So it's a tough question. As to his other question about like knowing it's the best move and needing to wanting to have the courage to pull the trigger. So Daniel, before I was, I used to be a professional poker player.
Oh, right.
And before I got back into chess, I was a chess teacher in my 20s, and I was playing poker and traveling for 7 years. And then I was trading the financial markets for a few years in between poker and returning to chess. And I read a lot of books about trading, which was both applicable to poker in particular, but also I think of it sometimes with chess. And there's this this famous book, which of course I'm going to forget the title of, by a guy named Mark Douglas, I believe. Anyway, I'm not going to derail this spending 15 minutes trying to think of the title, but it's about the psychology of trading in financial markets. And he said, and it's about how people, when they make a trade, they put on their trade and then they want to like futz with it, they want to like, take off half the trade to secure a profit, stuff like that, or move the position, you might have a target when you place a trade. You want the market to reach this point and then sell it. Or you might, if it starts going against you, even though beforehand you say, okay, if it gets to this point, I lose. If it doesn't, I'm going to let it play out. But then you start like freaking out when it's going against you and you end up letting it, messing with it sooner. And he said the reason that people do all this stuff is because they don't accept the risk of the trade. They haven't thought through, when you do this trade, you have to accept, I might win, I might lose, but I accept whatever the consequences of this action are. Okay. And I think that there's an element of that in chess and stuff like sacrificing in particular, where sometimes it can be helpful to take a step back and think of the big picture and remind yourself, like, no one cares if you win or lose this game, but you'll feel better about yourself if you trust your instincts and play the move that you think is the best, and accept the risk that you're wrong. Accept the risk that it costs you this game.
Ben, I think you should have been my coach about 35, 40 years ago.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, because someone like, for example, the best prime example, Magnus Carlsen, he accepts that risk.
Exactly.
He's absolutely brilliant at it. Okay, so we've got
I thought of the title, by the way. First time in my life, I remembered a book that I was trying to think of. It's called Trading in the Zone by Mark Douglas. Okay. Anyway, go ahead, Daniel.
Excellent. Listen, I think we should actually look at what happened in the game. And we've had several correct solutions. Well done to those of you. Well done, Gustav. Well done, Omkar. And I think Michael got it as well. So bishop takes h6 was played by David. And if we see, this is a variation in the game. Pawn takes And then that's the blocker of the f pawn again. And if that's taken, we got to check. And there we go, because the f pawn is blocked. There's no f5. And actually, the game continuation I thought was really, really beautiful, actually. What's the winning move here, folks? Just very quickly. And actually, this pattern is really familiar to me from a lot of Greek gift sacrifices, where this is a really common motif, strangely. So, white to play and win. What was David's winning move here? Beautiful finish. Oh, there's a bit of a delay. There, I can hear the cogs whirring out there. No one's got the solution yet. That's interesting. Nope. That's interesting. Nope. Come on, guys. Michael says, Volker, finally. You see, I make you think, guys. Well done. G4. Beautiful move. With the threat Queen H5 mate. This works because the bishop is on the back rank. So there's no rook H8. Okay, listen, let's move to the next position. Okay, I'm going to throw... Now, actually, Ben, you didn't give this position to me when you were... I should say that Ben sent some positions to me in advance. But you didn't include this. I'm going to include this one. So it's white to play and mate in 2.
Oh, yeah.
So Ben, mate in 2. Well, I think white's winning this position anyway. What's this got to do with chess improvement? What's this got to do with the price of tea in China?
Exactly. Yeah. So this is in a chapter about endgame studies and their efficacy. And basically, I'm a big fan of the work of Grandmaster Wojciech Miranda. He coached Gotham Chess a few years back, and he's written some great books, Universal Chess Training. And one thing he does differently is he gives puzzles that are some tactical, some not tactical, and then just gives like incredibly detailed explanations. And at some point, I was writing about tactics versus pattern recognition and talking about endgame studies. And I was interviewing him around that time, and he offered to help. And then he ended up going on this rant about endgame studies and how like every trainer says they're the best thing ever, but he had a very specific list of when he thinks they're helpful and when he thinks they're not. And basically he thinks like studies like this where it's mate in 2, but obviously, as you say, as long as you don't fall over on the board and die while you're playing, you're going to win the game. So it's like, why are you spending 15 minutes trying to find this mate in 2? Whereas the ones that he felt like mirrored a more game-like scenario where there's one narrow path and it's gettable, that he felt that those were more helpful. So
okay, I'm going to put the case for so this is a problem rather than a study. So this is when I say a problem, I mean this is kind of chess definition. There's a stipulation. So mating, it's obviously winning for white, as you say, but it's mating 2. I'll put the case for this kind of position. You see, I think this is really good for calculation and for pattern recognition with mating patterns. I don't like it when it goes to like mating 7.
right.
Too ridiculous. Whereas mating 2s, I'm a big fan of them actually, because they're really good for calculation. So, one doesn't move the pieces on the board. So it's all about just a couple of moves deep, and you have to be absolutely precise in your calculation. So I
have to say, since I didn't send you this one, you caught me off guard, and I can't remember the answer. I'm
sorry. Okay.
You're trying to figure it out.
You see, when I looked at this, I got this straight away because I love mating 2s. So this is my kind of position, I have to say. And I think, I remember a few years ago when I was looking, for example, at the Greek gift sacrifices, and I thought I kind of knew those backwards. I was sort of doing it for actually a chess-based DVD. My God, I learned so much. And I felt like they were at my fingertips. And I feel I'm a bit sharper through this kind of thing. No one's got it right yet, by the way. Oh, no, Michael F has it. Yeah, great. Well done, Michael F. Rook E2. It's a beautiful move. Actually, it's kind of a well-known theme. once you see this kind of thing blocking a bishop, you know, ah, yeah, it's probably going to be that. So if king here, then there's this, and that's mate, so it cuts the king, and king here is mate. See, now I have to think about this.
Bishop G2.
Bishop G2. I got it.
Yeah.
There we go. So, yeah. So I'm a big fan of these. But yeah, what I find interesting in your book is that you're not. You don't say this is the way to improve. You weigh up different arguments, and I think that's really important. Because people do learn in different ways.
Yeah, you could also call it being wishy-washy, but I try to,
don't do yourself down.
I try to at least suggest, I try to hint at what my leanings are, but I also don't consider myself the ultimate authority. And one other thing to your point about this, maybe like you liking this kind of position, Wojcik actually, when he emailed me and he sent me like 4 examples of this is what a good endgame study is, and 4 of this is what a bad endgame study is. And this actually wasn't one of the bad endgame studies, but he's a grandmaster. A lot of his students are like master level players. So the ones that he sent me as bad endgame studies, I felt like they were too hard for, like, I wanted the book to be readable for like 1,000 to 2,500 level. And the bad endgame studies, it's like, it was going to be 3 pages explaining it. So I was looking for something simpler, and this is what I settled on. And obviously, as you say, like a puzzle like this, like Grandmaster Jesse Cry, who I'm friendly with and also quote in the book, like he's a huge fan of that Laszlo Polgar brick book. And there's tons of puzzles like these, and he's got the students of the chess dojo, like Michael, doing them. And, like many other methods of chess training, it might be the best, it might not. But if it's something that gets you to do it, then that in itself is like a massive victory. So
we're back to motivation again. I couldn't agree more. Yeah. Absolutely. Let's get back to more familiar territory for you.
Okay, this one I remember well.
Yeah, exactly. So and I remember this game at the time because this won. I'm pretty sure it won the best game prize in Gibraltar. So this is Anna Muzichuk playing white against Ori Kobo playing black. So Anna played an absolutely beautiful game. Kevin says, nice to be able to read a chess book in a couple of hours for a change. Wow, it's taken me a bit longer than that to get through this. But anyway, Kevin, you're a fast reader. So white play. What did Anna play now? Well, I think this position basically comes...
Black goes rook h6 here, right?
Excuse me. I beg your pardon. Yeah, rook h6. So this comes back to your idea about... correct calculation.
Yeah. And some puzzles in the book, I knew right away what puzzle I wanted with a specific theme. Others I had to do a little digging. And Anna Muzichuk had this quote I wanted to use that I'm paraphrasing, but basically that grandmasters not only see deeper, but they see wider when they're calculating. So I was like, all right, Anna, let's look at your games and see if I can find something that goes along with this, or if, you're just, spouting nonsense. And then I found this example and I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is probably what she was thinking of when she said this.
Yeah. Ishan Ganguly has cracked it. Well done, Ishan. Well done. Brilliant. So this was Anna's idea. So sacking the bishop. And then this wonderful move, rook d7, so that if queen takes h3, rook takes g7, and yeah, that's a rather beautiful checkmate. So basically, black has to defend this pawn, so rook g6. And then there was a check.
But this idea of just leaving your queen on pre, like, I could spend 20 minutes and the thought might never cross my mind. And I think that's a very common, it gets to the core of what she was saying.
And yet it's not deep, is it? It's just
yeah.
It's not. It doesn't go 15 moves deep. It's just a couple of moves.
Yeah, and technically it only wins a pawn. Like in the game, they didn't go for the mate, and she had to. It's a very nice pawn. It's a clear advantage, but still, if you're an amateur, like you still got to win the game,
Yeah,
if they
definitely.
don't allow the mate.
Okay, so we're talking about calculation here. So calculation, an absolutely fundamental skill in chess if you want to be a strong player. So can you try and distill all this knowledge that you've gained? How do we get better at calculation in a very short nutshell, in a small nutshell?
Jonathan Rouse, and I probably quoted in the book, chess improvement begins at the edge of your comfort zone. You've got to push yourself, unfortunately. So yeah, I mean, dedicated practice. I talk in the book about the difference between training digitally and physically. And, the science isn't like 100% rock solid on this, but it does seem that there's a general consensus that engaging muscle memory is helpful for helping grow your chess skills. And I think particularly for those who came to chess later and are more used to a digital chess representation, like practicing physically, especially if you're trying to improve your OTB game. So at minimum, a little bit of calculation work every day. And as I quote, like FM Peter Giannatos, who made big leaps in his 20s, he's one of the adult improvers that I interviewed, even though he's also built this hugely successful Charlotte Chess Center. His guidance is basically you want to find a level of difficulty where you're getting about 70% of the puzzles right, give or take.
Okay. So the big question is, yeah, I've got it. I need to work at my calculation, but where do you actually get the source material? What positions do you use? So now we're into the debate on Puzzle Rush or not Puzzle Rush.
Yeah, I'm more not Puzzle Rush, especially once you're on the intermediate level. I mean, if you have a coach, you could. I have a list of recommendations on my website sorted by rating, so that it's more helpful. But you can also, like something like the chess steps method, is designed to take you from 0 to 2200, and its explanations are lacking, which is the one downside of it. But the actual puzzle curation is amazing. So if you're just looking for sort of like one-stop shopping, you can start at the 1000 level and work through all these books to get to 2200. But it is often the case that like some sort of mentor or coach would be helpful, whether it be, or something like the Chess Dojo, where they can recommend books appropriate for your level. And it's important that when there is an answer you don't understand, that they can help guide you through it. I mean, I also talk in the book about like how to try to use the engine to figure out an answer. But it's not that easy if depending on your level.
Okay, so you've got lots of recommendations for where you can source this material in the book, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, that's great. Something that struck me actually was, some people sort of say you can either visualize or you can't. And I went to a really interesting lecture by a guy called Chris Ross a couple of years ago. And Chris is a blind chess player.
I think I've seen one. Yeah.
He brought out a book called Blind Faith.
Right, that's what I saw.
Where he goes through some of his games. And this was a fascinating lecture. So this was at the Hammersmith Chess Club here in West London. And, big audience. And he stood there with an old-fashioned demo board and was moving the pieces around himself. He's blind, completely blind. Wow. And talking about his games. And he said, well, yeah, I can visualize because I have to. I play blindfold chess. And that's how I can calculate. And he said that when he was a kid, he would travel back from the chess club every week on a local bus with a friend of his. And they would go through the games that they just played that night. And so they would be analysing the game on the bus back and playing blindfold chess. And he says, that's how I got good at calculation. Because I just practiced and practiced. And he didn't even know he was practicing. It's just, that's what he did.
Yeah.
And so these people that say, oh yeah, I mean, I had to question myself because I thought I'd always been able to play blindfold. I never questioned it. But actually, as a kid, sometimes someone would say, oh, do you fancy a game of blindfold chess? And I go, yeah, okay. I practiced.
Right.
That's how you get good at it. So I
Yeah.
don't think there's a kind of mystique around it.
Yeah, I just think it's harder because those circumstances you describe are sort of organic.
Yeah,
Um, and like Jordan von Forest, when I interviewed him, said like he loved to read chess books when he was a kid, but he was too lazy to get out a chess set.
exactly.
So he just naturally,
Yeah,
worked through playing through the moves. I also quote Wojciech Miranda saying like he used to. This is the pre cell phone addiction age. He used to go on hikes with his family in the woods and he hated it. He would get super bored. So he said he would always like try to memorize some chess game or chess position before he left so that he could be thinking about it the whole time he was
right.
going out on a hike.
That's interesting. Listen, before we go any further, I want to look at more positions, but I haven't even touched upon your Chessable course yet. So you've got a Chessable course that hasn't been out very long, has it?
No, about a month, something like that.
So it's called Identifying Critical Moments in Chess. Chess games are won or lost through these 5 critical moments. Here's how to ace them. Okay, well, talk us through identifying critical moments in chess.
Yeah, so this is really a very personal project. It's really about my own game. So I reached USCF Master when I was 18, and one of those, as I mentioned earlier, drifted in and out of chess over the years. But basically, my peak rating, both in FIDE and USCF, was around then in the 22 to 2300 range, and I've at times lost hundreds of points and had to climb my way back. And there have been periods where I've trained hard, and periods where I haven't, played at all. Years where I didn't compete at all. But as I came back to chess more seriously in my 40s, especially like when the podcast came along and I felt like I should be competing more, I really struggled with playing more practically with time trouble. And I think even worse than when I was younger, which when I was younger I did too, but I think I was sharper so I could get away with it more. So basically it's about how I've slowly learned to be more practical and to sort of have a more top-down approach of like how to constantly think about like how much to think during a game. So I try to share what I've learned about identifying some situations, but it's a more targeted course. Like it's I'm a lowly USCF 2100-ish player at this point. So it's more for like the 1000 to 1600-ish chess.com level. There are some more challenging puzzles and there are some that'll be easier. But that's sort of the target audience. Whereas my book, I feel like, as I said, I feel it's designed for any chess enthusiast to be able to read it.
Right. Okay. But again, we've got the link to the Chessable course there if people are interested. By the way, just on this topic of kind of puzzles, this shot into my mind when we were talking about Puzzle Rush. So I'm springing this on you.
Okay.
But this is a game from the Olympiad that I thought this was so funny. So Arjun Erigaisi against Shamsidin Vohidov. As I'm sure everyone knows, Erigaisi had an unbelievable Olympiad for India. I mean, what did he score? 10 out of 11. Yeah, 10 out of 11 on board 3. But I showed this game on my YouTube channel. And this was one of the few games where Arjun didn't actually win. And in this position, it's roughly level. Black played 98. And then I do my usual thing of, okay, folks, what should white play here? You have a think, I'll take a drink. That's my little catchphrase. And like everyone piled in on the chat. Well, it's obvious. And Omkar has got it right there. He's given the game away. Bishop f7 was missed by Erigaisi. Because if queen takes, here's a really nice move actually. Queen d4. Lovely move. So obviously there's a pin here. And to save the queen, knight f6. And then a simple check here. And it really is game over. There's absolutely nothing. And the comments on the chat were absolutely hilarious. They were kind of going, oh my God, how could he miss this?
Right.
I saw this like in 3 seconds. Like, this guy's the number 3 in the world, and he missed this. Oh my god! The comments were hilarious. So I call this is the tap of the shoulder moment.
Right.
So if there's someone in this position tapping your shoulder, going, "Hey, you've got a really good move here."
Right.
We're gonna see it. But
Yeah.
basically, this game has been going on from this moment in a very kind of similar position, where they were kind of jockeying for position, and they're both getting a little bit short of time. And okay, which of these moments over the past 10, 12 moves was the critical moment?
Right.
This is the point. And in the game, he played rook e3. And basically the game... Well, Eric Geisty tried to win this one, but he didn't get there. So this is the point, folks. And it's kind of arguing a little bit against Puzzle Rush.
Yeah.
That there's no one tapping you on the shoulder telling you this is the critical moment.
Yeah. And that's why I said my course is more for a lower level. Like, this is just, it's too hard,
Yeah.
even though, again, it's not a lot of moves, similar to the Musicek position. It's not a lot of moves, but this one, like, it's, as you say, if you get the tap on the shoulder, it's easy to spot, but otherwise the general tenor of the position is semi-critical, but there's nothing about this particular position that says now is the time,
That's the point. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a really funny moment because the comments that piled on were just like, oh, how could you miss that? It was hilarious. Right, let's get back to one of your positions. It just struck me. Okay, let's talk about...
Oh, he only had a few seconds left. That's a good point, Omkar.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Also, yeah, a very, very valid point. Yes. Now this position, Henry Olinik against Michael Davis, U.S. Championship. I think it's the blind championship for the blind.
And I think you should flip the board to the black perspective.
Okay, yes.
For this one. Yeah, and just to set the stage a little bit. So this is actually from my Chessable course. So in my Chessable course, as they said, I did kind of settle on some types of moments where you're never going to have 100% accuracy of like knowing, is this a critical moment or isn't it? But I at least wanted to point out some situations where you can at least have a voice in your head that says like, oh, I should stop and think here. So some of the situations where what I call can I take it conundrums, where like someone takes something and then you're trying to figure out like, are they bluffing me or not? Like, can I take this back or not? What I call back rank chicanery, where there's just so many amateur games get decided by back rank tricks. We might return to that in a couple positions, king and pawn, and simplified endgames. There's just end up being so many tricks and positions like that. So this one is in the can I take it? And there's a bit of, but it's beyond that, because hopefully after Daniel shows White's move here, we'll at least answer that question quickly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the basic thing, any forcing moves, any captures are always worth considering. Is it any good? So,
yeah.
black.
So I guess the question is, what is black's best move? Yeah.
Yeah, what is black's best move? Exactly. Yeah, this is an easy one to be tripped up on, actually.
Yeah. And I had fun with doing this course because the positions are unlike in the book where I'm quoting grandmasters, so looking for positions from their games and stuff like that. This one it's for amateurs, so I was combing through the chess-based database, but and Lichess database, but focused on amateur games, and you can find some really interesting positions that no one's ever, shared or analyzed when doing that.
Okay, so what is black's best move, folks? Michael says, who put my rook on g8 like this? Fair point. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's pretty horrible. But it's black to play. What are we going to do? You know, time's marching on. Guys, I think we're going to have to just show this one. So,
Yeah.
first of all, we should probably avoid bishop takes with a simple checkmate. Okay, we've got rook takes f6, I guess. This isn't really calculation, is it? People are guessing. Okay, but let's have a look at rook f6. So that is indeed a good move. And let's just go through the game, which went like this. Sorry. Whoops, I'm going backwards. That's good. And queen g8. And
Yeah,
yes.
so we give up our rook, but now it turns out white is just hopelessly checkmated here when black takes on f2. So yeah, this was from what they called managing materialism, or the can I take it, as I originally called it, chapter. And some of them, it's like a double can I take it puzzle. I mean, obviously, you, as Daniel pointed out, you can't take the queen on a7. And hopefully, you know, if you're playing a serious game, even if you don't see why you can't be mated, you're attuned enough into chess psychology to realize like there's probably some reason I can't take this and take a minute. But then you have to evaluate if you can take the bishop, and it's easy to reject the possibility of taking it because you're, as Michael said, your terrible rook on g8 is on pre. But if you look a move deeper and see that after queen b8, king e7, queen takes rook, you can, with the bishop on d4, you can take on f2, then you'll win.
Yeah, and the pawn is too strong. Yeah. Okay, so it's just going a little bit deeper, but that's not, yeah, not too much. Okay, let's move on to this one. I need to flip it. I'm going to flip it round.
Yeah. So this one, yeah, and these are, this one, I'm just trying to look at the ratings of the players. It doesn't have them, but often I found like, I'd find like 1,900, 2,100 players making mistakes that grandmasters wouldn't make, suffice to say. Mistakes that they often might not make. So this one, it is white to move. Go ahead.
So I was just going to say that this is just a local league game in Germany. So, I mean, as you said, we don't have the ratings of the players, but I think in a local league like this, they're not too strong. So white to play. Let's throw this one out there. So black is heading in this direction. White is going in this direction. What should white play here? Well, to me, this is a really good example of how in the end game, there is just no substitute for calculation.
Yeah, that's one of the things I say in the course. Yeah,
and you can talk about general ideas in end games, but it's all about specifics, basically. You just got to stop and crunch it. Ishan Ganguly, well done. Michael F says, "Wait, we're up a bishop. How did we lose this?" With great
white
ease.
Panicked and gave up the bishop in this game. And yeah, after king b1, I don't remember offhand. Yeah, I think it's a draw after king b1. But yeah, king c3 and black is in Zugzwang very quickly.
Yeah, apparently that's a draw. But in the game, this was played. Oh my word. That's not too clever. And it doesn't take too much to see that the king runs over. And
snatching defeat from the jaws of victory.
Okay, I think we know the end of that story. So, however, as several have pointed out, in fact, king c3 is...
And then after king a2, see if chat. Yeah, and now black's complete Zugzwang.
Or... Yeah, b2, and again that one. Yeah, no substitute for calculation. I can see that the time has kind of marched. For those joining late, we're talking about Ben's book, Perpetual Chess Improvement, which I warmly recommend. Really nice book. It's very readable. It's very funny as well as giving really excellent practical tips on how to improve your game. And we're also talking about Ben's new Chessable course, identifying. Hang on, what is it? Identifying critical moments. You say what the title is.
You got it. You're a natural.
Oh God. A natural that bluffs my way through. Yeah. Okay. Listen. Let's. Before we go, if anyone's got any questions, now is the time to ask.
Yeah,
Ben.
and throw up the last puzzle because it's a fun one, the Hapala one.
Oh yeah, this one. Yeah, really nice. Yeah, I know. Lisa Hapala actually. She plays for the Austrian women's team.
Okay. Unfortunately, she didn't find the move, but this is a tough one.
Oh, did she not find it?
No, she didn't.
Oh.
And this is another wide but not deep puzzle. But black plays knight takes f2, and obviously it's total chaos on the board. And now that's where you guys come in.
Okay, so white to play. Omkar says, does Ben have a book on how to be a good podcaster? Well, okay, that's a good question, actually. I mean, do you find it's like falling off a log now when you're doing your interviews? Does it all seem very natural and easy, or do you still encounter difficulties or difficult interviewees, or
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I try to. Most battles are won before they're fought, as they say. So I try to at least have some ammo, especially like with the amateur players. There's not much on the public record, so there's you kind of just have to go where the conversation takes you. But with the professionals and authors that I interview, yeah, I try to come with some ammo of what I think will be interesting topics. But then obviously you have to listen and be ready to pivot if they say something interesting. But generally, when you can have people telling stories or evoking emotions, it tends to be more relatable. Some people are, obviously someone like Yasser, who I've never gotten an interview. So that's been brought to his attention somewhere along the line,
right?
But other people maybe, they're not as practiced public speakers, so you kind of have to try to draw it out of them a little more.
There's one thing that we talked about, calculation, which is, of course, absolutely fundamental. But there's one thing I'm going to mention to you all out there that, Ben, you talk about in the book. And you say work with a partner.
Yeah, community. Yeah.
Having a community. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, a community, it could be a chess club. It could be a virtual community. But I found that there are moments when I was working on my chess, when I was playing seriously, when working with a partner, oh my goodness, this just makes things so much easier, and it's just more fun.
Yeah, it's just a massive difference.
And I felt as though I made great strides. I mean, there was one time when I was living in Germany, and there was a guy at my local club. Who's very decent player, and we both ambitious. We wanted to improve, and there's this thing about annotating games, and we decided, okay, we're not going to annotate our own games. We're not going to go through our own games. Of course, this was pre-computer era. We decided to pick what looked like an interesting game from a top tournament like Tilburg in those days or whatever, and we would annotate it. Analyze it separately, and we would spend like a week on this, and the next week we would get together and basically discuss okay, where are the critical moments in this game. So in these days, there weren't people just pressing a button and getting instant analysis to see okay, this is the critical moment. So it was kind of a bit of a mystery for us, but actually it was so productive. It really was. One can still do this. You just have to resist pressing that button on the computer where the engine will just give you, tell you exactly what's going on, basically.
Yeah, and like cohorts like the Chess Dojo, again, they do a good job bringing people together, and I've certainly interviewed adults who have weekly Zoom groups and stuff like that. And to tie it together with current events. So in the book, I talk about community, but I kind of tell the story through the lens. I mean, I do quote a few amateurs in that part, but also like people like Magnus and Vishy Anand, who are considered sort of, you know, they're like they came out of the blue, but there were seeds in place in both cases for them to sort of change the cultures where they were. And Bobby Fischer being another example in New York, Magnus, of course, being lucky enough to go to Seaman Agdestein, who was up to that point the best Norwegian player ever's school, and to be discovered. And Vishy, like, you know, I tell the story like his sister, like he knew that he liked chess. But it was just a game that he played. But then his sister walked by one of the only chess clubs in India, in Chennai, and said, "Oh, there's a chess club here." Like, so in light of what just happened in the Olympiad, all these disciples of Vishy, as Hikaru called them, like, what happens if his sister doesn't walk by like that one chess club? You know, like how much different is chess history then?
But also, Vishy started. His family were living in the Philippines,
right?
And he played in a chess club in the Philippines.
Yeah.
So that's where Vishy started his chess, in chess clubs, and he would play millions of Skittles games. That was his thing. So Vishy came out of a community, and I think we can say that for every strong player. They had a chess partner, or they came out of a chess community, even though we think, as you say, Bobby Fischer was kind of one of a kind. Absolutely not. He grew up in New York City.
Yeah, as Donaldson said, like it could have only happened in the U.S.
Yeah,
in New York if he's going to be born in the U.S. These days, maybe St. Louis too, or Charlotte, but back then, and actually, and of course now the internet's the great equalizer. So I'm not sure how true it is geographically now, but I mean, when we see stuff like India and Uzbekistan emerging, I mean, it does seem like there's still something to this idea of like talent hotbeds and like peers pushing each other.
Totally. And from my own experience in England, that's what it was like. And basically, I realized I was very fortunate to grow up in London in the 70s. I was part of the Fischer Spassky boom post 72, where suddenly you go down to a local chess club and all the kids were playing, and you went into a big tournament, and I thought I was something special in my local chess club because I was winning the tournaments there. And then suddenly I went to junior tournaments in the centre of London and realised, oh my god, there's hundreds of kids who are exactly the same as me. It was really funny, and there was a chess community, so you climbed over each other. Yes, I'm not reading the comments. Just very quickly, Kevin says chess clubs in decline in the north of England. Most play online and use engines as a playing partner. Where do you stand on engines as a playing partner, Ben?
I haven't been able to make them work for me. If I think they can be decent if you're able to take the game seriously and if it feels the same to you. And obviously, like Lichess, as I mentioned in the book, it's got these neural networks like Maya and stuff. Like I certainly, your compatriot Matthew Sadler notwithstanding, he's the only person who can play these super strong engines, never win a game, and find it like equally exciting every time. I think everyone else needs some positive reinforcement at some point. But the neural nets at least are trying to play more human. So if it works for you, I think it's fine, but it's never worked for me. I find I need to play other people.
Yeah, it's a bit dispiriting sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah.
But actually, I have to say, in the past, I found it useful to develop opening ideas and to develop my understanding of a position. I would play against the computer.
Right.
And of course, the computer was going to beat me every time, but I would basically stop at that point where I made a huge blunder and play on the next time from there. But you need to be quite disciplined doing that.
Yeah, but it's definitely helpful if you're up for it.
Yeah.
But
not so easy. Yeah.
Yeah. And catching up on the chat, someone was asking about how many classical games a year. Yeah, I actually don't remember if it was 50 or 60 that Donaldson said. But yeah, I quoted John Donaldson in the book, and I think that's a good general guideline.
Yeah. But actually, just picking up Kevin's point about some chess clubs in decline, there are also some great examples of chess clubs that are absolutely thriving. And they're kind of model chess clubs. And I can talk about in London, I'm connected with Hammersmith Chess Club in West London. and they went from like a dozen players about 10 years ago to they've got like 250 members now, and
That's
there's
great.
so much going on at the club. But that's because there are a lot of people that have worked really hard to get things going and invested their time and energy into getting people to give talks, and trying new stuff all the time. And I know actually, Kevin, in Yorkshire there's the Ilkley Chess Club, and also a very new chess club called Melton Chess Club. Not so far from you, Kevin, actually. There you are. But they've only been going about a year, and they're doing incredible things there. So there are like examples of best practice where actually in real life chess clubs are still absolutely thriving, which is fantastic to see.
Yeah, and I think pub nights are getting bigger here, chess pub nights here in the US.
Oh, right.
And yeah.
Yeah, I think they are here. But they're a bit like mushrooms. Sometimes they develop and then they disappear quickly.
Right, yeah.
So yeah, it depends. I think we're going to have to draw things to a close.
Okay. Well, you should show the answer. A couple people got it in chat.
Good point. I haven't been paying attention. So queen takes b8.
Yeah, amazing.
And now rook here. Yeah, it's interesting. You sort of it's not easy to see that actually the king is in trouble here.
Yeah. Yeah, so this is in the back rank chicanery chapter about how like sometimes back rank themes are obvious, but sometimes they're pretty hidden. And yeah, this one I couldn't believe.
And that was the end of that because the knight is too far away, and that's happening. And that's
Yeah,
the
no
end of
checks
that.
miraculously.
Yeah. So I think we're going to close there. I'm just going to recap again. We've been discussing Ben's book, Perpetual Chess Improvement, which I warmly recommend. It's full of great practical tips, available from New in Chess. You can see the link up there in the chat, and also your Chessable course. Give it to me again, Ben.
Identifying critical moments in chess. Yeah, and obviously, like I said, that one is for a more targeted audience. But if you're a trainer, there's also good positions, and of course, Chessable has a money back guarantee, as I'm sure that you're aware as well, Daniel, a fellow Chessable author. So people can check it out, and if they don't like it, just send it back. My book, you're stuck with it if you get it. So.
Well, as I said, really, really great stuff. So listen, Ben, just very quickly, before we go, what's the next project? You're still thinking about it?
I'm procrastinating. I'm leaning towards working on some chess workbooks, I think, probably next, but I'm not certain, and I'm slow moving.
And how about guests for Perpetual Chess podcast? Who have you got coming up?
Well, I just interviewed Grandmaster Axel Smith. He's got the hotly anticipated Woodpecker Method 2. Obviously his first book being a landmark hit in the past few years. And it's an amazing book. It's really a great resource for, 1400 to 2000 in particular. But I often get asked about how do I improve my positional play? And the idea is it does for positional ideas what other books have done for tactics, and they did an amazing job. And this is not like a paid endorsement. I just was super impressed with it. So I've got that coming. There's a Turkish guy who just made IM at the age of 39, Salim Sitak. I'm interviewing him on Saturday. I love these stories of people persevering. I'm going to catch up with Ben Feingold soon. And I think probably a couple other authors, but nothing official yet.
Fantastic. Sounds like, as ever, there's a lot going on. So, Ben, thank you very much for joining me. And, good luck for the future.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Daniel. Like I said, it's an honor. Keep up the great work. I always look forward to your recaps.
Doing my best.
And thanks for tuning in live, everyone.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. We'll see you soon on the channel. Okay, bye now.
Okay, I'm still here. I always have to warn people not